afternoon. I'm Dennis Galucki. Welcome to the 598th Imagine Greater Buffalo program and our 219th YouTube Imagine Buffalo program, hosted by our wonderful downtown Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Thanks for joining us today. This program is created by the Center for the Study of Art, Architecture, History, and Nature, or C-SAAHN, as I like to pronounce the acronym, and ImagineLifelongLearning.com. Before we get started, just a little housekeeping. Everyone watching will be muted and your video turned off. If you have a question or comment, please type it into the chat box and we'll go through them at the end of the presentation as time allows. We are recording this program so you can watch it again later on the Central Library's Facebook page and YouTube channel. And please, we hope you share the link with others. Now, on to our featured speaker. Joining us today is Dr. Kathryn Grow Allen. She is an anthropologist who has been leading the Heritage Engagement Project for the new Ralph Wilson Park. Dr. Allen, welcome, and please start us off by telling us a bit about yourself and how you came to this work, this very important work for our community. Take it away, Dr. Kathryn.
Thanks, Dennis. My background in anthropology started in Western New York. I went to SUNY Geneseo and the University at Buffalo, where I got my degrees in anthropology and archaeology. I'll talk a little bit in my presentation about the project that kind of led into the Heritage Engagement Project at Ralph Wilson. But for most of my career, I've been very interested in the way that heritage and the past and the present affect modern populations. I did work around Eastern Europe, I did work in the Arctic, and I do work here in New York State, helping people see the value of protecting heritage, but also creating and promoting heritage for the future.
Good.
Would you like me to start my presentation?
I think you should.
Okay. So thank you again for this opportunity. I'm really excited to share this project. It's one that I'm really passionate about, and I have been ever since we started a few years ago. So I'm going to hop right in. This is talking about the Heritage Engagement Project. It's a project meant to mobilize heritage for impact on the shores of Lake Erie in downtown Buffalo. First, the professor in me would be amiss not to give you guys some definitions to start. When I talk about heritage in this presentation, what I mean is two things. The well-known definition of heritage, which is something that comes from the past, but also something that is in the present, things that we're doing, creating, building in the present that is intended for the future. The most common use of heritage is in UNESCO World Heritage Site context, right? So UNESCO, the United Nations, designates the natural and cultural heritage places all around the world, right? So these are places of outstanding human value, things like the Taj Mahal, the Colosseum, marine ecosystems of endangered species. These all get the stamp of World Heritage. UNESCO also defines intangible heritage. These are things like oral traditions, performing arts, knowledge of traditional ways of doing things, festivals, rituals, right? So they use that intangible marker to protect things of outstanding value that is not physically, an artifact or a place, but a knowledge set that we would like to preserve in the present and pass to the future. So around the world, there are thousands of these World Heritage sites, right? And it takes a lot of effort to get them inscribed and get them protected and promoted. And they often garner a lot of attention, a lot of tourism. A lot of people visit them, millions, some of them each year. Likewise, there's a lot of intangible heritage that is increasingly well known because it gets inscribed by UNESCO, it gets protection, it gets promotion through the United Nations. Now, I've always been really interested in UNESCO World Heritage, but a few years ago, I became more interested in what I call off-the-list heritage, right? So there are these places and these knowledge sets that are incredible, right? They are, in order to be on the site, you have to prove that you're of outstanding human value, right? So these are very noteworthy places and legacies of the human past, right? But I increasingly became interested in everything else, right? So what about heritage that's off the list? What about smaller places of importance? What about smaller knowledge sets that still add to who we are as a community, who we are as a country, and who we are as a species? The place that this really kind of drove home to me was a project I was doing in the Arctic. So I was in Greenland in 2021, and I was there for a official UNESCO World Heritage Site project. So I was doing some public science work with Asavisuutnipisat. That's the newest Greenlandic World Heritage Site. And I was sharing it with my class and with the public. I was interviewing people and exploring heritage, both tangible and intangible, surrounding the UNESCO World Heritage Site. But I increasingly was coming across a lot of heritage that was not necessarily related to this big, very important place, right? This was lesser known, lesser publicized heritage. So we were interviewing community members and asking them to bring family heirlooms that we were 3D scanning and having conversations with them about their family heritage. I was talking to teenagers and asking them about celebrations and holidays like the Darkest Day, which is in December. The Greenlandic population celebrates the Darkest Day. It helps make it a very joyful day instead of kind of a gloomy one like it can be in America. And I kept coming across all of this incredible heritage, and it wasn't necessarily related to the UNESCO World Heritage Site. That project actually led to the Heritage Engagement Project with Ralph Wilson. So when I got back from Greenland, Katie Campos, the executive director of the Ralph Wilson Park Conservancy, she'd been following my Greenland project. And she reached out to me and she said, is this something that we could do or use at an urban park, right? So there's a brand new park coming into downtown Buffalo. Is this heritage approach or this heritage idea valuable for somewhere like a park? So I was really challenged by that, in part because I had always done places of extreme antiquity, right? Thousands of years old, as an archaeologist. And in Greenland, I was working with very rural, very small communities, right? I was up in the Arctic Circle. And here at Ralph Wilson Park, it was an urban environment, and it was land that wasn't very old at all, right? It was less than 100 years old. But despite that, I thought it was a really exciting idea. So I came up with this title, the Heritage Engagement Project. I wasn't even sure yet what I wanted to do with it. I just knew that I wanted to see what heritage could do when thinking about rebuilding and opening up a brand new park for an urban community. So a little bit of park background for those who may not be familiar. Ralph Wilson Park is a 100-acre park in downtown Buffalo. It's on the shores of Lake Erie, obviously one of the Great Lakes, and it's the third park to sit in this location. So some of you might be familiar with the former park. It was LaSalle Park before, and even earlier than that, it was Centennial Park. So back at the turn of the century, when it was first created, it was dredged up from the lake bottom and first created into a park. It was done so to celebrate the centennial birthday of Buffalo. So they created a park, they hosted this massive celebration, and inviting millions of people from all over the US. And then after the celebration was done, they opened it up to the public, and it's been a community space ever since. We are currently undergoing a massive transformation of that space that's turning the former LaSalle Park into Ralph Wilson Park. And in many ways, this transformation is incredible in its own right. So my work is very specifically with the Heritage Engagement Project, but the incredible transformation of this park is worth looking into if you haven't learned about it yet. So it is a very unique approach to park redesign. So if you want to learn more, look up Imagine LaSalle, and this is the community group that was drawn together to create the vision that is coming to life right now, right? So members of the local community, members of community groups that were using the park for decades were brought together in a kind of focus groups, a vision group. They were sent to see examples of world-class parks in Chicago, in Detroit, in New York City. And then they came back to Buffalo and said, okay, what does our world-class park look like? And it was a very community-driven design. On top of that, kind of separate to the community approach, this is an area of considerable environmental concern. So there was severe shoreline instability. We were losing the shoreline, and it was threatening the water supply of the city. It is a Great Lakes area of concern, so it is part of a bigger initiative, a federal initiative to protect the Great Lakes as a whole. And it is, in general, the park was increasingly under threat of destruction in the coming years. Research had shown that there was a very good chance there wasn't going to be a park unless significant alterations to the park were done. And so this transformation is both driven to impact the community, but to also ensure that there is a park for buffalo's future. Okay, so my area of working with the Conservancy is specifically in this heritage engagement project. And what I ended up doing with this is creating a public communication campaign that uses heritage as a tool to encourage stewardship and connect communities with this urban green space. So this was my way of exploring how strong and how powerful heritage can be with an urban green space. Now, urban green spaces or urban parks might not be the first place you think of when you think of human heritage. I introduced you guys to the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, right? Those are the ones that most people think of, right? We have the Colosseum, Stonehenge, these huge places of magnificent built landscapes and places. But I think that an urban park is an incredible place to think of as heritage, right? Urban green spaces have pasts, and those pasts are very influential on the use of the park, how people feel about the park, and whether or not it's still going to be there in the present and the future. They also have futures that are very much dependent on our current efforts. So some urban green spaces, especially Ralph Wilson Park, are areas that might be under threat from climate impacts. They might be under threat from poor management or underinvested in, right? What we do today is going to influence the legacy that we leave for future populations, right? So what happens in Ralph Wilson Park's transformation today is going to determine the kind of legacy this green space can provide to the communities of tomorrow. And so in an urban green space, the focus on past, present, and future, I think can make an incredible case for connecting people to that space. Now, in my project, I really wanted to help the park use heritage to advance their goals on three levels. I wanted to help them with goals that they already had that were local in scale, right, to support and engage neighboring communities. I wanted heritage to help them with goals that were more regional, helping to promote and protect Great Lakes. And since this park is on and kind of features a Great Lake, it could kind of tap into those broader goals. And I wanted to help them shape what we're doing at Ralph Wilson Park in light of global goals. So the United Nations has these sustainable development goals, and one of them is to build better cities for the future. And so having high quality urban green spaces is part of that goal. And so I wanted to use heritage to help the park kind of tap into that global vision. So here's an example at all three of these levels, right? At the local level, the Conservancy really wants to support, engage, and help develop the neighboring communities around Ralph Wilson Park. And I think that heritage can help them do that. So here's an example of the play spaces. So this is one of the play spaces that's going to be in the middle of the park. It's called the Play Garden. Right. So even before I started this project, the community was thinking about heritage because the elements of the design tap into buffalo heritage. Those two kind of jungle gyms, I don't know if you could tell, but there's people standing on it to see the scale here, right? These are native species to Western New York, and so they're being featured in these jungle gyms. The freighter ship is kind of a nod to buffalo's industrial industrial past, right? The heritage. And so not only am I highlighting, the pieces of heritage that were kind of woven into the park design, I also talk a lot in the project about what quality urban green spaces will provide to the local community, making it a place of legacy and a place of heritage, right? So the science shows us that without question, kids who have access to high quality green spaces have lifelong benefits, right? They have lifelong higher levels of mental health, good physical health, better outcomes all around, right? So in thinking about legacy and thinking about impacting a community, right? If you approach building this state-of-the-art park as a means to support the kids of tomorrow, I think that's an excellent evidence that heritage can help with local goals. On a regional level, I'm trying to use the heritage approach to help the park connect with Great Lakes initiatives, right? So the park is right on Lake Erie, and it's going to help connect people with this Great Lake and hopefully people who are more connected to the Great Lake are going to be more willing to support initiatives that are trying to protect it and promote it. So the former park, LaSalle Park, it made it really hard to impossible to actually access the lake. The new park is going to have kayak launches. It's going to engage people with that blue water even more. And as the state-of-the-art park will draw many more people into the park when it opens up, I hope that it will show people, it'll kind of showcase this Great Lake and get it more on the forefront of their minds and help them kind of get more involved or more supportive of Great Lakes initiatives all across Western New York. And then globally, I mentioned this United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, right? The UN wants the world to start thinking about building better cities for the future. Two of their elements in this goal is to provide access to green spaces and to protect and safeguard cultural and natural heritage inside of cities. And so that's why I think a heritage approach at an urban park can help Buffalo say, we're trying to follow global initiatives and global goals to build the city of the future, one that will benefit people in many ways, least not having state-of-the-art green spaces and kind of promoting our cultural and natural heritage, whether it's the natural heritage that the park will now be home to, the native birds and plants and insects, whether it's the lake, right, which is one of our, if not the most amazing piece of natural heritage that we have in Western New York, or whether it's just the history of Buffalo and the events that happened on this land that I highlight in my project. Okay, so what does the park actually look like? Currently, it is a bunch of stuff, actually. So I have been writing monthly blog articles since it started in 2023 and writing newsletter content for the monthly newsletter that goes out from the Conservancy, as well as social media content to draw people in and connect them with the park, even though, and maybe especially because the park is currently closed and you can't access most parts of it, right? And so keeping it on people's forefront, on their minds, and having them think about what it's going to be when it reopens. My content looks at history. It highlights things that happened at the park. It looks at the science behind what the park is going to provide the communities of today and the communities of tomorrow. And it just kind of approaches heritage as a way of connecting people. I do public presentations like this one. Some of my research and work is used in grant applications, historical markers. We're right now applying for a historical marker for the seaplane ramp. So not everybody realizes that there is this concrete ramp coming out of the water. And people haven't really known what it is for a long time, but it is an artifact of the marine airport that Buffalo had for a very short period of time back in the 20s and 30s, right? And so we are applying for a historical marker using the research that I did to write an article about it, so that people realize that Buffalo has this kind of interesting, short-lived but interesting role in marine aviation. The grant applications, I discovered in some research that the amphitheater down at the park was actually designed by a world-renowned architect, Walter Bird, connecting it with some incredible examples of tensile architecture around the world. And so the fact that it is in fact a bird air installation is being used in grant applications for public programming that will bring more live music concerts to the amphitheater when it reopens. I'm experimenting with microlearning, right? So microlearning is a very interactive piece of content where you teach the public something in about 5 minutes or less. Last year, we released 5 birds to find this winter to get people to think about going to the park in winter. It identifies 5 native bird species that you can see off the shores of the new park. And so I plan to keep it going and kind of relaunch it when it opens in hopes that it'll bring people to the park in winter, which has all sorts of benefits for the community in and of itself. So bird watching is just kind of a way to get them there. And I'm also hoping to launch this year 5 days in history at the park, which I would love to get into the schools, any schools that might want to do field trips to the park. Maybe they could do this little micro course teaching the kids 5 days, 5 important and interesting days in the history of the park. And I also am working on 5 plants you'll meet at the park. So teaching people 5 native plants that are being planted and that they can kind of go and hunt down and look for once the park reopens. This content is also sometimes used in park decision making. The fact that the amphitheater is a bird air that was discovered in my research is helping solidify the decision not to tear it down, as well as change management. And so sometimes change is very hard, right? And one place we saw that is when when trees were removed, when they were cut down, the community had a really hard time with that, completely understandably so. And so I wrote about it. I talked about the legacy of trees and what it means to remove some in order to plant ones that are native to the area, ones that will stop the erosion at the shorelines, ones that will bring people into the park safely, allowing for ADA accessible wheelchair paths, things like that. And so I think helping people see that short-term pain can be worth it for long-term gain is one thing that heritage can absolutely help communicate to people. The content highlights interesting history, it shares relevant science, and it's hopefully building a narrative that will encourage stewardship and help the community see this as a legacy worth protecting once it reopens. There's lots of future possibilities. I hope to be able to do all sorts of interesting things beyond just what we've done so far. No promises of anything right now, just things that I've been thinking about. And I think when the park reopens, there'll be all sorts of incredible opportunity for heritage engagement. I wanted to briefly mention before I finish up that I also think that this is an approach that can be used elsewhere. Right. And so I think a heritage approach to urban green spaces and kind of off the list heritage is a way to get people involved in the past, but also in efforts in the present that are meant to make great cities and great places for communities of the future. I was asked to present this project for a fundraiser for the new High Falls State Park that is coming to downtown Rochester. It's in its very early stages. And in this presentation, I strongly advocated to put heritage on the table from the very beginning. I also just recently shared this project at a climate resilience and community partnership workshop with the Adirondack Council, because I would also really like to get the Adirondack Park on board with leaning further into their own heritage and using that as a way to engage the community further in different parts of the Adirondack. So I think that what we're doing at Ralph Wilson Park can and should be done all over the state. And if I have anything to do with it, I'm going to run all over the place and share this as a model for others. So that's the project really quick in a nutshell. If you want to check out some of the content and some of the topics I've covered over the last few years, please go to the blog. One great way to do it, at the bottom bullet point, I say read the December recaps. Every December, I write a recap and I share all the articles and topics that I covered that year. It's an excellent way to see what I've covered in the past. And then each month or every other month, depending on what's going on, you can check back or you can read about it on the monthly newsletter that you can sign up for through the Ralph Wilson Park Conservancy. I'm really excited about this project. I hope it continues to grow, but it has had an amazing power to connect people with a park that has been under construction for a few years now. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions.
Indeed, Dr. Allen, well done.
Thank you.
What a new treasure. I must say I've done close to 600 programs, and I can't remember the word Greenland coming up in any previous program. Now, a bit of irony in the time, but certainly noteworthy. Do you stay on? You're a consultant to this project. Do you have a long-term contract? Will you be here, or do you disappear? And all this work that we get started doesn't have a continuation, which is what I want to understand how permanent you are to us, because you don't live here. You live the other end of the state, northern country, near Canada. And what's your sense of longevity with you being in relationship to this project?
So I will argue I actually have 2 homes. Dennis. So Western New York is my second home. All of my family, my parents, my siblings, my nieces, my nephews, my spouse's entire very big extended family is all there. I adjunct for the University at Buffalo, and I spend quite a bit of time in Western New York. So I consider myself home to the North Country and to Western New York. And I am very dedicated to building Buffalo because it is a place that I love, and I very well might end up back there permanently. So on one end, I'll say Western New York is just as much home as the North Country. On the other, I will say, as far as my consulting, it is a year-to-year contract. So every year, the board votes whether to keep me on. And so far, I have been kept on, for 3 years, and I'm hoping that with the potential to grow this so much with in-person engagement, maybe in-person workshops or field trips for local schools that help give them maybe scavenger hunts to find some of the natural history, some of the highlights of the natural history that we have there, or the spots where historic events happened, right? I think there's so much potential coming that I'm optimistic that they're going to keep me on. But even if they don't, I think this did a very important thing, which is helped keep people engaged through the hardest part of keeping people engaged, which is closure. Right? It's been closed and it's been under construction and it's been arguably an eyesore, right? People don't like to see construction. And so that's one of the most important times, I think, to keep people in the head that we're building something great for the future, right? And here's why, and here's all this interesting stuff to kind of help block out the hardship of the present.
I'm intrigued too with the idea that we see ourselves uh, as part of a global issue, sustainability, for instance. And one of the two themes has been to imagine Buffalo as a premier cultural and nature center, but the other one is to imagine a healthy, wealthy, and sustainable community. I don't think the world has many good examples of it. It has some better than others, but it would be nice to be a leader first in New York State, as I hear you talking of reimagining spaces like parks and whatnot towards a larger goal. And then Buffalo takes pride in that leadership role.
Mhm.
And so that's my hope. That one United Nations clip that you showed, the image that you showed is if you can get it back on the screen, I'd like to have that as a backdrop as well. So we continue the Q&A with that one. Yes, like
Can you
that.
see it?
How
There
we
we go.
connect, yes, how we connect with the rest of the world. But with that, Hannah, do we have some other questions or comments?
Yes, we have some questions about the sort of the way that the highway separates the city from the park, and if that has come up in any of the heritage conversations about this park's renovation and the potential plan for the project. We also have sort of just general questions about the timeline for reopening as well.
I'm going to start with the timeline. That's a hard one and not one that I can't give specifics. I can tell you that they are the aim right now is to start reopening this summer. It will probably not reopen entirely, so it's going to be a phased reopening. But this summer is when the beginning of the reopening is supposed to launch. That's kind of the city's driving a lot of the construction, so I can't say 100% which parts. But this summer, I really hope that, and I'm optimistic that there's going to be people in the park. The second question about the highway, absolutely, it's come in, and it's come in a couple ways. First, the highway runs over what used to be the Erie Canal, and not a lot of people know that. And so I've written about that during this year was the 200th or the bicentennial celebration of the Erie Canal, and the park has this huge role in that history. Most people don't realize it because the Erie Canal has been filled in, right? And so the Erie Canal cut right through the park, and then to its terminal end in downtown Buffalo. And interestingly, the Erie Canal came back into park history last year because they used the canal to transport our new bridge from where it was created over in Italy, and then it got transported all the way through New York State and arrived at the park. So I had a field day with this because I was like, here is a park that is being built for the future. The bridge is a very important part of crossing over the highway because the communities living right next to the park that are meant to be strengthened and benefit from this access to a world-class green space, they couldn't safely get there without this bridge. And so this bridge is really very representative and very iconic to bring these communities and these kids over to this park, right? And we used a historic, one of the most historic parts of New York State built history to transport it, right? An underutilized part of our architectural history transported this ship, and it slowly made its way through all of these communities, and people got to see it. In many places, they could reach out and touch it. And it was this really cool merging of past, present, and future that got it here to put it over the highway. So in many ways, that highway that is kind of was a negative part of the park, right? You got this highway cutting through. We've been trying to use it in any way possible to link in this heritage idea and make sure it doesn't detract from the park.
That's awesome. I do remember hearing lots about the bridge. It's very, very exciting and beautiful.
It's beautiful, yeah.
Yeah. Um, the other question that came through in the chat, I mean, I'm excited about all the ways that this work could continue once the park opens. But some people are wanting to get in touch with you about other potential heritage work. And I wondered, I don't know if you shared this on your last slide, but if you would be comfortable sharing an email or
Yeah.
some way that people could reach you.
Yes, absolutely. Where should I? I don't think I have it on my.
Um, if you want to put it included in the chat, that might be
All right.
the best way.
We'll absolutely do that.
Dennis, do you have any other questions?
No, but we are getting to our
Our
lot of time.
time.
But I do want to I guess when the park opens, is there money dedicated towards the educational process for just people that happen to show up at the park? Will they see signage? Will they see some way in which they're putting these goals, this larger goal, for instance, the tying it into the UN? I mean, this vision so that it's an education center, a lifelong learning center, just by being there for whoever happens to show up and discover as they explore the park, just walking around. What plans do we have? Do we have a budget for the lifelong learning aspect?
Unfortunately, Dennis, I can't tell you that because I don't know. But I would be incredibly surprised if there is going to be wayfinding signs and hopefully historical signs and lots of that kind of stuff. I just can't promise it because I don't know the budget at that point. So as a consultant, I focus mainly on this project, on the Heritage Project. So I do think that this project is pushing that, right? I think it's making it clear how valuable this would be, and so I intend to keep on pushing that. So,
Well,
but I cannot promise anybody on here on that one.
well, what you don't have to promise actually, because with the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation behind this and the park that they are supporting in Detroit, it's a major commitment. So I'm sure there's money involved, and if the ideas are good for lifelong learning in the park, the budget will be there. I have every confidence. Let's put it that way. At least that's my hope.
This park has changed how I feel about parks. Working on this has changed entirely how I feel about not just the value of a park, but the potential of a park, right? Diving into the research of what this and other high quality green spaces do for humans is, as an anthropologist, it's mind blowing, right? These are incredibly important parts of a vibrant and resilient city, and I cannot wait to see this park when it's fully done. And so, regardless of how much heritage is in the final programming, this park is going to change Buffalo. I deeply believe that. And so I can't wait for all of you and me to walk through it when it reopens.
And the obvious question, I thought it might come up, so I held off, but the heritage aspect, includes the indigenous folks that were here long before LaSalle discovered it or anything else. And I'm sure that's all part of the reports that you're creating and the information that you're creating. And will this, by the way, end up as a course, some curriculum item at UB? Will it have that dimension to it?
I hope so. I'll let maybe I'll pitch that to my chair in
Why
in
not?
the fall.
Why
The
not?
UB has had a huge role actually. The UB was a huge part of the original community envisioning program. And so it's kind of full circle to now be working on it as to be teaching for the anthropology department over there and working on this simultaneously. So University of Buffalo has had a big stand in this as well, which is really interesting. As the more you dive into it, you're going to see the whole this whole process. There's a ton of players, right? We work with the Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper as a partner. All the little leagues are partners. The micro course I did with 5 birds, I co-created that with the director of the Land Conservancy because he's a big birder and he knew tons and had all these bird images off the park from the birding community in Buffalo, right? The EPA, the Army Corps, they all gave grants that are helping with some parts of the park's re-envisioning and revitalization, right? This is the city of Buffalo obviously is a very big partner. The Ralph Wilson Park launched it and they pulled in all sorts of community partners, right? Big, but also small, right? Like the community driven process had members of literally the local communities right next to it coming in and saying, what do you want for your kids? What do you want to see? How do you want the festivals that have been there, the Funk Fest and all sorts of other Buffalo staples that have always been there? How do what do you need to keep that heritage alive too, right? So their partnerships are massive and they're right down to the very community level, making it a really great example of what a project like this can do for an entire city or region.
The library is the lifelong learning center I maintain, and I trust that it will continue to do that, especially on this sort of project.
Oh yes, I use the Buffalo Library resources for my research. A lot of my images are from the Buffalo History Museum. Yes, the heritage institutions should not be forgotten. They are very important for my research.
Very good. All right. Well, Dr. Allen, I love doing this program because all the people come on are enthusiastic about what story they're telling. They're involved. And you've certainly demonstrated wonderful enthusiasm for this project. So thank you for being involved
Thank you.
And a great presentation. Folks, thank you again for watching and joining us today. Hopefully you'll join us next week on the 27th. We'll be joined by Dr. Barbara Seals Nevergold and Taylor Harden. They'll be discussing their work on the documentary titled A Shot Rang Out, which uncovers Buffalo's connections to the Tulsa race massacre. Interesting program coming up. I hope you can join us. I'm Dennis Galucki. Be well and good day.